In this video I'm going to explain how you can actually take blocks which have been quilted as you go and attach them together in a row with binding strips and complete your Scale Builder Block of the Month quilt. So first what you're going to do is you first need to cut out your strips of fabric according to the instructions in this lesson. I've got my 1-inch single strip here, and then this was a 1.5-inch folded in half. So you can see here I've got it folded in half and I've got it pressed with starch, so it's really stiff, which is really important. You don't want to work with very floppy fabric. You definitely want it to be stiffer and very crisp. So we've got these two strips. Next I've got my block that I'm going to join first, and you'll be attaching the joint to the right side because I'm going to piece together my rows right now. So I'm going to just turn it like this so that I can work. And I've got a pressing board and my iron. It's very hot. I'm going to use Elmer's washable school glue with a fine tip to put these together. It can also be done with pins if you're not a fan of glue. Glue is just nice because there's no bulky pins in the way when you're trying to sew. You just sew right through it, and it's just a lot faster and easier that way. I also have been sitting here with my pressing board, my glue, going ahead and doing like an assembly line, so it will actually really speed up the process. So what you're going to do is you're going to put a little stream of glue within the seam allowance, so that 1/4-inch seam allowance on the edge of your block, and I'm working on the top of the block right now. So the front top side of the block, front. And you're going to take your 1-inch strip that's not folded, and you're going to place it down on the glue right against the edge, and you're going to place it down with the wrong side up, so right sides together. You're going to press it down into place. I'm lining it up, and in the instructions I mentioned that you're going to be cutting the strips slightly larger than the width of the block. This really is actually really helpful because there's a little bit of movement when you're putting these strips on, and it's just better to cut the excess off than to be short. And you'll see that when you start doing quite a few of them. So what I did was I lined the strip up with one edge, and it's hanging off on this edge. So I've pressed it down. Now I need to heat set the glue with my iron. So I have a hot dry iron, and I'm just going to go ahead and set this on here for a couple seconds to let that dry. And so we have this piece here, the unfolded piece is right sides together with the block, and it's glued on now. Now what we're going to do is we're going to flip the block over and work on the back side of the block. And we are going to need your 1.5-inch strip that's folded in half. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to put a line of glue again on the same side within the seam allowance. Then we're going to take our strip and we are going to line up the raw edge, not the folded edge, the raw edge with the edge of the block. And as I do this, I'm going to line up the edge again. Let me show you in just a second. So I'm going to line it up here carefully, and I'm going to heat set this strip in place with my hot dry iron. So this is in place now, and I want you to see that when I did that I lined up this edge with the block again, so this is one clean edge. There's no cutting necessary here. I did that for all of them, and then you've got the two excess ones here, and so those will be trimmed later on in a different step. So this is the first step that you want to do. You want to get these two pieces glued in place. You've got one on the back, which is the folded strip, and you've got the flat strip on the front. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine, And I'm going to stitch a 1/4 inch from the edge and stitch these two pieces into place, and then I'll be back. In the first video I explained how to glue these pieces on. Now we're going to go ahead, we've stitched them on. So I just went to my sewing machine and I stitched a 1/4 inch all the way down the side, and that went through all 3 layers. First strip, the quilt block, and the back strip. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to lay it back on our pressing table, and we're going to actually press the top strip open. Just like this. We're going to really get it nice and crisp and flat. That's why having starch on those strips really makes a difference. So now what I've done is I've opened up this strip here. Now if you look on the back, the strip on the back is still to the side. We don't want to do anything with that yet. So it should look just like this. Now what we're going to do is we're going to grab our next block that is going to end up going here. And what we want to do is we want to put these blocks right sides together. And I'm going to rotate it here so I can see better. So we're going to line up these edges, and you'll notice it's important to line up not only the strip edge, but you want to look at your entire block to make sure that these 2 blocks are lining up really straight. What I'm going to do is the same thing. I'm going to use just a very, very thin, especially on this part, very thin line of glue to hold it in place. And so we're going to go all the way across here. And then we're going to go ahead and press this in place. So I've got it all lined up exactly how I want it. Just like that. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to actually stitch again a 1/4 inch down this entire strip right here. So right here. And what's going to happen is once you stitch there, you're going to actually be able to open your 2 blocks. And the front side is going to be looking great. And then we'll work on the back. So I'm going to go ahead and take this to my sewing machine and go ahead and stitch a 1/4 inch. So I just stitched a 1/4 inch seam right here along this edge. And I'm going to go ahead and open the 2 blocks, still looking at the back side. So these 2 blocks are now attached to each other with that one front strip. So what you're going to do is you're going to press the seam allowances, and they should actually just butt right up against each other perfectly. So there shouldn't really be any gap at all. They should be flat, and they should just go right up against each other. So you just want to flatten it out with your finger. Make sure they fit really well. Okay, and I'm even going to just go in with my iron and press that a little bit. Just like that. The last step of joining the 2 blocks is the back strip. So what we're going to do is we're going to fold the strip open, and we're first going to press it. So go ahead and press this open. Just like that. Okay, and next, again, I'm going to use glue. And you could use pins here if you wanted to. And I'm going to put the glue, you've got your stitch line is right here. And I'm going to actually put the glue just below the stitch line within the seam allowance. And I'm going to only do about 3 to 4 inches at a time. Since I'm right-handed, I'm starting on this side here for some reason. I'm going backwards. So you're going to press the binding down, and then you're going to heat set the glue with your iron. And you're going through 2 layers. The heat has to travel through both layers of the binding, so you might want to press this a little bit longer than you did for the front. So I continue gluing along the edge. And this is when those very fine pointy tips works really well on the glue bottles. If you work in an assembly line, this process will actually go really fast, which was a surprise to me because when I had planned this I was thinking, man, that part is going to take forever. But what I did was I went ahead and attached the strips with glue to all of the blocks that in the row on the right hand side, and then I went and I stitched them all. And then after I stitched them all, I did this step. And before I knew it, all of my rows were together. So it's not too bad. Alright, almost there. Once you get this completely glued down, you have two options. And this is really a personal preference, what you have planned with your quilt. You can either hand stitch it in place, just like you would when you're binding a quilt. So the same exact stitch. I mean, it's exactly the same as binding a quilt. So you could, maybe you do the ladder stitch or the split stitch, or whichever one that you prefer to use when you bind. You could do between each block and for each row when we do the rows. So you could do that, or since I'm using a dark black fabric and I've got so much black on the front, since I'm using the same color front and back, if I'm going to actually machine stitch mine, because you're really not going to see the stitches. And what you can do, let me grab one. Here's a block that's already been stitched. What you're going to do is, when you're stitching, you can either do a little tiny zigzag, or you could even just do a single stitch, which is what I did, and it worked absolutely perfect. You're just going to work on the back side because we want to be able to make sure that we're getting the entire thing without going off of the edge. And you'll just stitch right along the edge that we just glued down and securing it in place. Stitch all the way down and off. And what you'll see on the front side is just a small line of stitching that on something with all of this quilting you can't even see. So that is a really fast way to get these put together. If you enjoy the hand binding process, then you can do that too. So you're going to use the same exact method when we actually piece our rows together. And we're going to do almost exactly the same for when we stitch our borders on and finish the quilt. If you have any questions, just email me at alyssa@pileofabric.com.